Well, let's talk about where we are today for a minute. Um, you must have strong opinions about the
Dylan Mulvaney campaign.
yeah, Dylan Mulvaney campaign.
I think my family, my ancestors would have rolling over in their grave. They were very patriotic. They loved this country and what it stood for. They believed that transgender, gays, that sort of thing was all a very personal issue. They love this country because it is a free country and people are allowed to do what they want. But it was never meant to be on a beer can and never meant to be pushed in people's faces. So they would have they would have never marketed their brands that way. As you know, AB was one of the greatest marketers ever in any business. And they were incredible with what they came out with: the Clydesdales, the frogs, the lizards, all the different promotions they had, all the different advertising they had. And the last thing they would have done was to get as controversial as they did, as InBev has with Dylan Mulvaney advertising.
Do you think that, I mean, look, the motivation behind it was clearly inclusiveness. What do you think of the reaction to to that Instagram post? Because the reaction was seismic.
Yeah, I think people who drink beer, I think they're your common folk. I think they are the blue collar worker who goes out and works hard every single day, and the last thing they want pushed down their throat, or to be drinking is a beer can with that kind of message on it. I just don't think that's what they're looking for. They want their beer to be truly American, truly patriotic, as it always has been, truly America's beer, which Bud Light was and probably isn't any longer. And to put that kind of message on a beer can,
I'm sorry for stopping you. What's the message? I'm a little confused here because why is it not American?
I think it's not American. I'm not saying it's I just don't think the audience that drinks beer is into transgenders and that kind of advertising. I think people that drink beer are much more again, straight, blue collar. I mean, I shouldn't necessarily say straight. I think as the beers for everyone.
I can testify there are gay bars all over
Of course.
Hollywood and Los Angeles that serve Bud Light.
Bud Light has sponsored Pride events for years, and it just hasn't seemed to be an issue since.
Yeah, I mean, Brad's right. I mean, they have sponsored Pride events. And so why?
And listen, I worked at distributorships and delivered to a lot of the gay bars and things like that. So it's not that Bud Light isn't inclusive with everybody. I don't think that's the issue. I just think for the majority of the drinkers out there, that to be advertising transgenderism on their beer is something they don't want to be a part of. I think I think the people, for the majority who drink beer, care about wholesome things, care about America, and believe that certain things in life should be kept private. And transgenderism is one of them.
Why? Why?
Why should that be kept private?
Yeah.
Because
if I'm gay and he's gay, should we keep that private?
Yeah, you don't have to keep it private, but I don't think you should advertise it on a beer can. Do you? I mean, if I like,
we just looked at Bud Light rainbow cans. I mean, the company advertised on there, and that seemed to be okay.
Yep. Well, I don't know. Why do you think then, you guys, that people are turning away and boycotting Bud Light now?
Prejudice.
Why?
Prejudice.
You believe it's prejudice?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely, it's prejudice. I mean, the same argument could have been made. Look, I remember my dad telling me stories that there were bars in LA that used to have signs that said "No dogs, no Jews." So there's been a history of prejudice in the country. People get over certain things. It's happened to Jews, it's happened to black people, it's happened to gay people, and it's happening to transgender people. So to me, it is absolutely prejudice.
Well, I just think You know, I think prejudice against Jews, against black people, those kinds of things is a totally different deal than advertising. And I'm sorry, my dog's getting excited. Take him out. Go on.
Well, that makes 3 of us.
Excuse me, 1 second. Let me move him out of that. Sorry about that, guys. You still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I just happen to think that your sexual preference is meant to stay private. I just don't think I think it's not when you talk about racism.
But I got to stop you for a second. Being a transgender person is not a sexual preference. That's different from a sexual preference. It's an identity.
That's a fact.
It's a little bit. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true,
Yeah,
guys.
I mean, if you look at a transgender person, for example, Caitlyn Jenner has talked about, I believe, has said that it didn't change her sexual preference because she became a woman. So being a transgender person is an identity and not a sexual preference.
I think there's just such a small minority of people who are transgenders who want to change their sexual identity that it doesn't make sense to put that on a very popular beer where most of the drinkers, 99% of them, are straight people and don't identify as something like that. It just doesn't make sense, and that's why I don't think it's racism. Because I'm not getting confused because I don't think it's racism.
But you're saying straight
against
people.
Transgenders.
You're saying straight people. You don't know whether a transgender person is straight or not. It's not a sexual preference issue. And by the way, if it were, I'm not so sure why people should turn their backs on that, but this is not a sexual preference issue. It's an identity issue.
It's an identity issue. Again, I think there are just so few transgenders with that identity that to put that on the majority of people who don't identify as that, their beer can, and who drink that, I think is a bad move on the part of InBev. I really do. I just think it's a bad move because I think I don't think people understand or want to be involved in that notion that that they're drinking that beer because it's a transgender, because there's a transgender person on there. It's not because they don't like transgenders. It's not because they're racist.
No, of course it is.
It's nothing like that.
No.
It's nothing like that.
No. What you're saying is that the majority of people don't identify and don't want it in their face. That's prejudice. That's what prejudice is.
I agree with you.
That's what prejudice is. It's intolerance, and it's saying, I will turn my back on your beer if it's supported by somebody I don't like. I mean,
I thought we were going to talk about my book, Charles.
Well, I did too. I mean, I did too. But
here we are talking about the politics of transgenderism.
You opened the door, Billy.
And I didn't know you brought it up. Actually,
I just asked you about it. Had no idea that you were going to come out firing this way. So look.
No, I happen to believe that the majority of people that drink Bud Light or that used to drink Bud Light do not identify with transgender people, not because they are prejudiced against that, but they look at it as a sexual orientation that they don't want to they don't want their beer advertised by that, and be a part of that. And so to me, it doesn't make any sense that Bud Light would have advertised in that way. I just don't think it makes any sense. And and I think that's one of the reasons there's a boycott now. Now, I don't believe that it's racism. I really don't believe that what I'm saying is racist.
I don't think it's racism
racist.
either. It's just prejudice. No. But look, we disagree on this clearly. I didn't know it was going to go this way, but it did. So look, thank you for the arguments.
Hey, thank you. I thank you. I mean, you make me think for sure. Absolutely. And it's always good to be on with someone who's gonna with a couple of guys that are gonna make someone think. And I'm not gonna complain about that.